And welcome back, everybody. This is episode 11 of the CS Sports Talk. I'm Lily Maddox, and that's Sean Campbell, and we have another special guest today.
2 in 1 week.
Woo woo. Yep, we've got Tyson with us.
Happy to be here.
Yay!
I was a little delayed, but they got the message.
We got it.
One of these days, Tyson, we want like an in-studio crowd. Yeah. Can you help us
Film
with that?
before a live studio audience.
Exactly. And we can get booed and, heckled and stuff, But we got to do that.
It was Sean's idea.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have lots of clients that would love to boo us. No, I'm just kidding. They're all going to applaud.
And we could probably guess them.
Yes.
Exactly who they are.
No, our clients love us.
We love all our clients.
Yes, we do.
Whether they'll heckle us or not.
So today, first I'm going to apologize to Tyson because we've said in our podcast that everybody in the office couldn't talk sports, and we kind of roped Tyson in with that, but it's a lie because Tyson could actually talk sports probably just as much as us, if not more.
Just a little. I enjoy
just
it.
a little bit. Yeah, so we have said that everybody else in the office knows pretty much nothing, and we kind of roped you in with that, but just know Tyson's not, he knows sports, and he knows more than we do in this topic that we're talking about today.
And really, the only reason why he has not been on is because typically we do this on a Monday.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only reason why you haven't been on, because we do it on a Monday.
Yeah.
I appreciate the accommodation. This is going to be fun.
It will be. It will be
because I think I'm going to learn a lot because our topic, I can't say it. What is it, Tyson?
So I think you're referring to the German soccer league.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and that is called the Bundesliga.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we're going to talk soccer in general.
Yeah.
But specifically about the Bundesliga.
Yes. I'm very
say
excited.
it, Lily.
Bundesliga.
That was actually better than me. That was good.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, that was good.
Before we get started, we have a question for everybody, and we want to know if you guys have a favorite soccer team or a favorite soccer player. And Tyson, why don't you start us off? Do you have a favorite team, favorite player?
I do have a favorite team. And so, soccer is kind of divided into club sports, which is like incorporated teams with, members that are fans that sort of buy in. And then, that's sort of the commercial side. And then there's like the national team side, which is where the World Cup comes in, where all the players from different clubs, they kind of associate themselves with one country and then they play in the World Cup and another national competition. So on the club side, my team is Bayern München. That's the top team in the Bundesliga. And then, I tend to, kind of divide my loyalty a little bit between Germany and the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Lily? Do you have a favorite soccer team or player?
So I just recently started even learning the rules of soccer because my boyfriend and his whole family, they are soccer players. And so I've been going to their games and learning soccer. So I've just barely dipped my toe in watching professional soccer. So I guess I would just say the U.S. national team because that's just who I know the most.
Yeah.
But then obviously like Messi and all them that I've heard of because they're so famous. But I can't really say they're my favorite because I don't know much about them besides that they're good at soccer. So yeah. What about you, Sean?
Well, I'm a very far away kind of fan, from a distance. I really don't get too much into it until watching like the World Cup and stuff like that. Because he's so successful financially, I've always kind of dug Cristiano Ronaldo. There's that tends to kind of stir the pot too. Yeah. With Messi fans and everybody else who do not like Ronaldo. So it's kind of like following the Yankees, so to speak, when you kind of like, oh, I love Ronaldo, or I wear his. I haven't really worn it around the office yet, but I do have a little Ronaldo T-shirt and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I should have worn that today. Yeah, but and then it's because when I started following Ronaldo, he was part of he played for Real Madrid, so I kind of followed them. Can I say I have a favorite team per se? Yeah, there's a couple favorite clubs that I follow.
I know who your favorite team is.
Huh?
It's VN Wiesbaden.
Yeah. I wear their shirt every once in a while.
Yeah.
around the office, and so Wiesbaden, of course. I've That's where I went to high school.
Oh.
And that's where you're visiting this summer. And
Yeah,
super happy for you.
Yeah.
Very jealous. And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys let us know if you have a favorite soccer team or player. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited about this topic so I can learn some more and get to watch soccer and act like I know what I'm talking about. So Tyson, why don't you explain a little bit about the
The Bundesliga.
Bundesliga.
So here's what's cool about the club soccer in general is that it's a different setup than what we're used to in the big four American sports, right? You know, they're individual leagues. There are tiered leagues in each of the countries. So like in England, there's the Premier League, but underneath that, there's the Championship League. And then there's other leagues that are lower than that. They're tiered because if you want to stay up in the so-called major league, you have to play your way up there. Usually the bottom two teams in the Bundesliga, one of them gets to stay up in the top league and one of them has to play. One of them gets relegated instantly down to the bottom one. And then the second worst one has to play the top team from the bottom league. And they can actually switch leagues down to the minor leagues with you or up to the majors.
Wow.
Right?
Which is really cool.
Wow.
Have you seen Wrexham? Wrexham explains it beautifully.
No, I
Because
haven't.
I think Wrexham was 3 tiers down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they got promoted this past season, right? I think.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to see what they got to do, what they have to accomplish. And it's not just winning the league, but you're actually being promoted up to a higher league.
Wow. So like every game counts when it comes to that.
Which,
Yes.
forgive me if I'm wrong, but it means ultimately more money. And,
Oh, a ton more money.
Yeah.
Oh my. So you could get bumped down too and
Yes.
lose money? Wow.
So right now in the Zweite Bundesliga, the second league, okay, there are some of the greatest cities in Germany. Just imagine if New York had like a minor league baseball team and that was the only team they had.
Wow.
Right? It's insane. Hertha Berlin is basically like if the Giants and Jets in the NFL, if one of them was in a minor league, right?
Wow.
So Union Berlin is in the Bundesliga, the top tier, but Hertha got relegated, and that's like the biggest city in Germany.
Yeah.
Hamburg is in the second tier. So what I love about the Bundesliga is that yes, you know, you can get sent down, or even some teams. Now here's the crazy thing: the way that the tiers work in European football is that if you have a club team that's made up of amateurs way down at the bottom, if those guys suddenly man up and they play really, really well, they can work their way up into the big leagues.
Wow. So you could just put a group together, and if you get good, that's crazy.
That has happened.
Wow.
And just talk to Leipzig's, Red Bulls team. That's what they did. Now they had corporate sponsorship, so it helped a little bit.
Right.
But they worked their way up, and now they're one of the top teams in the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty cool.
That is very
I
cool.
wish we would adopt that with each of our 4 major sports. I really do.
That would be cool.
You know.
Yeah.
You know
It would
why
put a
that-
whole new pressure on
Oh, yes.
playing. Wow.
I've heard it said that sports ownership in the United States is the closest thing that America has to a knighthood. That's how exclusive the club
Yeah.
is.
Right.
And because of that, that's probably why we'll never see a relegation system here, because
Yeah.
there's too much money involved.
Yeah.
But the thing is, especially like in baseball, I don't know if you followed what's been going on with the A's, right? The A's were granted permission to seek a new stadium in Las Vegas. So it was basically like everybody thought it was a done deal. But the ownership of the A's has drug its feet so long that they don't even know where they're going to be playing next year. They're supposed to be playing in Vegas, but they haven't approved any plans for it yet.
Wow.
So like that owner who has drugged down one of the historic franchises in baseball to crap, really, he should be booted out, or there should be kind of system in place where you drop down,
Yeah.
and yeah.
There is precedent for booting owners because, the big four in America, they have their own like little, antitrust legislation that protects them, even though technically they kind of are a monopoly, right?
Yeah.
But there are some things they won't tolerate, like racism and other big time infractions like that, and other owners can boot those guys out in cases.
Yeah, that happened with the Clippers.
Yep.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on a friendlier topic, the Bundesliga is great because, like, compared, there's different styles of football. Call it football and soccer, right?
Yeah.
There's different styles, and the Bundesliga tends to be a little faster paced, a little less, defensive. I don't want to, call them soft, but they're a little less physical, and that makes for a more graceful,
different
and
rules?
Game. No.
Okay.
No. The pitch is the field. And the size of the pitch can actually change from venue to venue, but the rules are basically the same at the top level.
Okay.
So the other huge thing about football that's amazing is the fact that you've got a whole top tier soccer league in England, one in Spain, La Liga, Ligue 1 in France, right? The Eredivisie in Netherlands, Serie A in Italy, in addition to the Bundesliga. And what's amazing is, so all these teams have their own little leagues. Imagine if there was like an American football league and a National Football League and a U.S. football league. But the champions or the top teams from each of those leagues now come into a super tournament.
Wow.
Right? And that's what Champions League is. So it's a playoff of the top teams from all of the different national club leagues, and you get a champion of champions at the end of that.
Yeah.
Usually in May and sometimes early June. That's the amazing thing about soccer.
That's cool. So we're going to have you on again in May or June to talk about that. That's super cool. I did not know that.
Tyson, here's a question for you. Do you think the style of play is most accentuated when, like, during the World Cup? Because that's when I recognize, again, I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I see the differences in style of play when there's actually like the nation versus nation.
Yes, and you'll see it in teams where they are comprised almost entirely of real nationals from that country that have played together for sometimes years.
Right.
Then you're going to see chemistry that is better than some of the teams that are from really big, rich countries that kind of will nationalize you in the national interest.
Right.
Whether your cousin's, mother's lizard was once, living in that country, they'll make you a citizen just for the purpose of the national team, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes chemistry trumps talent. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah. In particular, I noticed that I think it was not this past World Cup, but the one prior. The German team was just, they were a machine. They were a machine. It was as if they had little microchips in their brain. And they all exactly knew where each other were at all times.
Yeah, I think
it's unreal.
It's sad now because I was a huge Hansi Flick fan. He was the guy who, gave Bayern the triple of just a few years ago. And his lifelong dream was to coach, to manage the national team. He made it there and then bombed out in the World Cup.
Yeah.
But you're right that for years and really decades, the Germans' meticulousness and their strategy, their possession, the way they keep the ball for themselves and don't just let it go to the other team, they were machine-like.
Yeah, the Dutch team was another team that
they're
really
strong too.
Stood out, and it was. And I think you see a little bit like the Portugal and the Spanish, and it was a different style and a little more, I don't know how to describe it. It was a little more emotional. I don't know.
Passionate,
yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, whereas, and not to say that, but the Germans and the Dutch seem more mechanical and more machine-like.
Clinical.
Mm-hmm.
Surgical.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And actually, there was a time in between, German dominance when the Spanish team, that was one of the greatest teams I've ever seen assembled. Because typically what you have is the very, very top level of like 4 or 5 club teams are actually all-star teams. And they're typically better than the best national teams.
Yeah.
There are occasions, however, where the World Cup teams are just as good as club teams because of how many players come from that one country.
Right. So in a few minutes, tell us why the U.S. will never win a World Cup.
Never say never. If you had asked me that just a few years ago, I'd be like, well, let me tell you. But now, see, here's, as a Bundesliga fan, and that's where kind of the initial question was. It used to be basically, and forgive me, I love John Brooks, but it was the John Brooks show. He was the only kind of regular U.S. men's national team member to play in the Bundesliga, right? And that was kind of like the measuring stick. Like, okay, because all the European leagues are operating at like the top leagues are operating at a higher level than the MLS, which is the top league here. They're more equivalent to like a second league in the other countries. Those U.S. men's national team for many years, they rarely made it onto the starting rosters of these big European clubs, right? Wow. Now, there's a ton of them. Like probably more than half of the U.S. men's national team starters are all playing for these big European club teams. Some of them are even starters. People like Christian Pulisic, you maybe have heard of him. Serginho Dest is in the Eredivisie, in Netherlands. There's Aronson in the Bundesliga. There's a few guys that are out there, and they play well. Not all of them start. Some of them are very young, but that youth. Eventually, when all those guys kind of come into the prime of their careers, which is coming possibly to coincide with the World Cup being in the United States and North America, Mexico, and Canada in just a couple of years. Who knows what can happen when they're the host country?
Well, I hope I'm proven wrong. But
that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, your turn, Lily. What questions do you have?
Well, I'm curious what's going on right now. So right now is the Bundesliga going on?
It is.
Yeah. Will you explain a little bit about what's happening now?
Okay, so this is another thing that's a little different from American sports. Everyone has like the table that shows you, which teams are doing well and which teams aren't, right? But in soccer or in football, what they have is a points table. When soccer teams win a match, they get 3 points for that.
Wow.
If they lose, they get no points. When they draw, and many games do end in draws when it's the regular season, they get only 1 point. So it's twice as powerful, actually 3 times as powerful to win rather than just draw. But at least you get something out of a draw, right?
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you look at how many points does a team have. Now, it's important to understand that Bayern München, they have won the German Bundesliga 11 years in a row.
Wow.
I love Bayern. That's my team. It's my family's team from way back. But that's not necessarily good for the league to have one team just dominate like that. Well, I have to say as a Bayern fan, I'm a little sad. They're on the 4th best pace ever for them. And they've been a great team for years and years. But that's not good enough because at this moment, Bayer Leverkusen is actually ahead of them.
Wow.
They have not lost a game this entire season.
Wow.
When did the season start?
The season starts in early September, late August, and it goes basically until May. So it's kind of a long season.
Yeah.
Usually 34 match days with breaks in between for holidays and things.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. So a new leader? As of right now?
Yes, as of right now. And Leverkusen just beat Bayern this past weekend.
Ooh.
Wow.
In a head-to-head matchup of Titans. And that was one that everyone was looking at because Leverkusen was already ahead by 2 points before that game.
Oh, wow.
They straight out won, and forgive me, they took Bayern over their knee and spanked them. It was 3-0.
Oof.
Wow.
Right? So now they have a 5-point lead. And they don't play each other again for a while. So, Leverkusen would have to go on a little bad streak for Bayern to catch up, even if Bayern won every game out.
Wow.
Leverkusen hasn't lost one game this entire season.
Wow.
That's interesting. That point season or that point style where they add points, and it's kind of different than like a record, how it would be for most major sports in the U.S. That's really cool, though.
Yes.
I'm also curious, this is more of a personal question. How did you get into the Bundesliga and your team that I still can't say?
Okay, Bayern München is just Bayern Munich, right? That's how we would say it in America, right? That's how it's spelled. But I got into it because Sean already mentioned that my family's from Germany. My mother was born in Wiesbaden, where the same city where he went to school. It's kind of like a northwest central, smaller German city. If you think of Minneapolis, St. Paul, that's Mainz and Wiesbaden.
So if you think about it, your mom, myself, Prince's wife went to Wiesbaden.
Yep.
Went to the same high school as Prince's wife.
Wow.
And that's where Elvis met Priscilla.
That is amazing.
Wiesbaden is like the hot spot
It's true.
Yeah.
of the world.
of the world.
And that's true because of Camp Lindsay. There was a military base there.
Yeah.
But my family liked Bayern because, part of my family actually married into the other part of my family, and they came from Bavaria, which is what Bayern means, by the way. It's the German word for Bavaria. And so I liked them, but I didn't start following Bundesliga. This is going to be embarrassing. I kind of started liking Bayern like 25 years ago when I was much younger, but then I didn't start watching until it kind of became available in the US, which it wasn't for a long, long time. Weirdly, I didn't really watch soccer like regularly until I had an HD TV, and there used to be this channel where the only HD content that they had was soccer games. And
it was forced down his throat.
But you know what? I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And you could see the pores on the player's skin. I was like, wow, this is because back then you couldn't get NFL in HD, right? Yeah. So I would watch that, and then eventually now, ESPN offers the Bundesliga for, live and on demand. Yeah. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah, so. It's on ESPN. The English Premier League, I believe, is on like NBC Sports.
It's on Peacock.
Peacock, yeah. And there's another. Was it La Liga? It's on one of the networks as well.
Yeah, Serie A and La Liga, I think, are both on ESPN, and then Champions League is on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you lived in Germany, did you get into soccer at all?
You know what? I did not. Played a lot of baseball, believe it or not, in Germany. Basketball, volleyball.
Is soccer the most popular sport in Germany? Is it
in the world? In the world.
Okay, so I figured because that's like does every country have a soccer team? Close.
Yeah.
I would say that there are countries you've never heard of. That probably have a soccer team. There are probably more countries that have a soccer team than belong to the United Nations.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What was that series that you and I talked about a year ago that was very on TV that talked about creating a Super League?
Oh yes, that's an Apple TV series about the Super League. I forgot what the title of it is, but that was crazy because it looked and felt like it was a created drama. But because the camera placement and the way that they interviewed the actual real players like Eduardo Ceferin, the guy who's the chairman of the UEFA. Yeah, man, that was crazy.
Highly recommend whether you're a soccer fan or not to watch that series.
Yeah.
It was
what's it called?
Wish I knew.
I think it was called Super League.
Maybe it was called Super League is the key word. That's what it's about. Yeah. And that was a couple years ago, but I'll tell you, I don't know if you heard this. Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Juventus are like the core three villains, right? And their lawyers have reorganized the very dead Super League into a new Super League, and they're trying to push that now.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's just a laughingstock because the fans hate it because all it is a money grab. So.
Right.
Wow.
So essentially, it's taking the best of the best teams, the biggest teams, and creating their own league.
Wow.
Without that type of structure that Tyson was explaining before.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Where they don't want to be relegated. Like you get basically the whole idea was, whoever the top teams are with the most tradition, like Real Madrid and blah blah blah, then they stay kind of no matter how they play. They can't be relegated. They just like cash in like Tuesday, Wednesday games on non-Champions League, weeks.
Yeah, but that's the whole essence of European football is that, regulation. You got to earn your spot season after season.
Yep.
So there was a huge uproar by a lot of fans in Europe that they didn't want that. So
and there are stories related to that. Like I want to say it was several years ago now. Leicester City was like the smallest, worst team. They barely squeaked into the Premier League after years of relegation, and they won the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those fans in that city are long suffering, and that's the kind of magic Cinderella story that if there's no relegation and promotion, you don't get that.
Yeah.
It's the same teams that are just utter royalty that stay around forever. And I'm saying that as a Bayern fan because that's kind of what has happened, right?
Yeah.
But it's at least possible for teams to rise up and compete.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You kind of mentioned the fans. The fans, unfortunately there is a little hooliganism, right, that goes on there. But I love watching games, and half the time I'm just watching the fans during the middle of the game. It's just their fandom is levels above what we see. Even the most craziest crowds we have.
Even Cowboys fans? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys fans are the worst. I'll admit it, right? Cowboys fans are absolutely horrendous. We make too many excuses, and I'm the only realist of them all.
Yeah, it's okay. Raiders fans are bad too.
But it's just the chants and the dancing and all the songs that are sung in the middle of every game is just really fun.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
When we watch, my wife watches with me too sometimes, and she, all the kids that come with their families and the moms come too.
Yeah.
And they're all there. All of them have their little scarves.
Right.
They're all singing the songs.
Yeah.
It's a very family atmosphere.
Wow.
And just being real, I took my wife to a Phoenix Suns game here not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it was like a nightclub in there.
Yeah.
It was not exactly family friendly. And we were like, what a contrast.
Yeah. And the NBA is so corporate right now. And we talked about that in a few podcasts ago. I cannot stand watching an NBA game. There's a thing called defense that is missing from today's game.
Oh, that's gone now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw Luka
Doncic.
his statement about it's much easier to score 30 in the NBA than it is in any European league.
Yep.
Because there's no defense.
Yeah.
There's no defense.
It's basically like a nightly all-star game now where people just sort of stand around.
It's horrendous. Yeah, not that I'm a betting person, but I always take the over for every game, and I usually win.
Not that he's a betting person, but he's talked about it the past couple of podcasts.
But last night I may or may not have hit on the over of the Cleveland and Chicago game.
Oh wow! Yeah, it's been crazy this year in the NBA. There's been 10 60-plus point performances.
Yeah.
Not all those players are all-time greats either.
Yeah.
It's like the leading scorer in the Bulls is some dude that I've never heard of. I've never heard of this guy. I'm like, who's this guy?
I think back to the 1986 playoffs where Michael Jordan scored 63 points against an all-time great Celtics team and still lost.
Right.
And that was a huge story. 63-point outburst.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's 60 points. Oh, that's pretty good. 5 guys did that tonight too.
I think I could score. Yeah. I think I could average 5 points a game in the NBA today. I have no doubt. Put me on a real good team, that blows out the other team, and let me play the fourth quarter. I could average 5 a game, easy.
Wow,
easy.
Let's test it. And if any NBA teams
NBA
are watching,
executive, sign me now to a 10-day contract.
This is old now.
I'll average more points in the NBA today than I did in high school.
I saw this commercial with Sean Marion back in the day. He was forward for the Suns. And there was a commercial where, these guys are all gym jockeys and they're playing pickup ball, black top. Yeah, I'm awesome. And and all of a sudden Sean Marion comes in his tracksuit, and he's kind of warming up and they're like, oh, he's not that great. Look at him. So they challenge him to a game.
Yeah.
And, he was dunking the ball with his tracksuit, just kind of barely making it over the rim. And then he's oh, you want to play? So he takes the tracksuit off. And the reason that he was kind of moving slow is he's got 100 pounds of weights. And he just takes those things off, and then you see their faces just drop. Because they realize that the guy that they thought they were going to play is not the same guy. So be careful what you wish for, Sean.
5 a game. 5 a game. How many did you average in high school?
1.1.
Not bad.
Not great.
Ball is hard.
Not great. I was a way better baseball player in high school. Yeah. I was pretty
Can't
good.
be good at everything.
But soccer's on its way up,
Yeah.
In America, people are finally starting to pay attention. There's the women's league now. The women's soccer team has been better than the men's national team at what they do. Multiple World Cup.
The women's team is always fun to watch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The passion, the athleticism. It's
I love watching women's soccer.
Yeah.
They're so aggressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're good too.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, we're going to have Tyson back in May or June, he said.
Right.
So we can cover some more about this. But thank you for teaching us. I hope you guys learned something. If you can add anything,
this was a cool
let us know.
episode.
It was awesome. Yeah, awesome for me. Thank you so much, Tyson.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you guys soon.